Hello and welcome to the Achieve Goals Fast podcast. Discover the fastest ways to transform your career, finances, relationships, and personal life.
Okay, so we ended up last week hearing about Mike Pettigrew, his journey which led to what he's doing now, and he was outlining the 7 steps he feels are critical for one to achieve their goals. He taught us about the first 3. Number 1, become clear of what you want and find out your reason why. Number 2, create highly charged goals, ones that provoke passion in us and excite us. And number 3, giving our goal a deadline, setting small short-term and bigger long-term goals. So we'll pick up there and hear the rest of my conversation with Mr. Mike Pettigrew. Enjoy.
So step 4 is, now this sounds a bit strange, programming your mind. It sounds like some sort of cyborg, but it's not. We all have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. And science tells us that I think about 95% of our mind is actually subconscious. We're not consciously aware of it. Our subconscious mind is the part of us that makes our heart beat, makes our lungs breathe, makes all the bodily processes work. We don't have to consciously think about making our heart beat. If we did, we'd be in trouble pretty quick. We fall asleep and we die instantly, within a few seconds, a few minutes. So our subconscious mind, it controls all the processes in our body, but it's almost like a genie, in the sense that it is that part of us that is connected to infinite intelligence. Our subconscious mind, it's honestly the most incredible part of our lives, and most people never become aware that they have this amazing resource within them. For example, the inventor Thomas Edison, one of the many ways he used his subconscious mind. Now, Edison, I know he invented the incandescent light bulb. A lot of people like him, and a lot of people don't like him because he seems as though he stole other people's inventions. And who knows? I have no idea. Sure. But anytime I mention this in my videos, I get this feedback. Edison was a crook. I'm like, maybe not. But anyway, look, one of the ways he used his subconscious mind, if ever he was trying to figure out some technical thing, and he just couldn't figure it out with his conscious mind, he would take a cat nap. He'd go to sleep for 30 minutes, 1 hour, and just before going to sleep, he would put firmly in his mind the problem that he had, the technical problem, and he requested that he gain a solution on awakening, and then he'd fall asleep. And I've tried this myself. It absolutely works. It's amazing. But on awakening, in many cases, he would have the exact technical solution that he wasn't able to access with his conscious mind. And I've tested this. It works like crazy. We have this amazing wisdom within us if we just allow ourselves to connect with it. But also our subconscious mind, I mean, this may sound quite harsh, but our subconscious mind is responsible for all our successes and all our failures. And in a way, it's a bit childlike. It takes instructions from us, and it goes to, what would you say, it goes to work on our behalf. So if we're constantly feeding our subconscious mind with negative thoughts, negative beliefs, constantly, this is what it thinks we want. This is what our subconscious mind actually tries to create for us. And you might think, what, does it go out of our mind or brain somewhere? No. We get inner promptings and nudgings to do certain things. Ideas will come into our mind that, out of the blue. We think they're just our ordinary conscious minds, but no, these are instructions our subconscious is giving us so that we can achieve the goal that we set. Now, if we just use our subconscious mind in a random way, we'll have successes and failures and successes and failures, and we won't have a clear direction forward. But there's a way of sending, what would you say, commands into our subconscious mind so that it starts working on our behalf in a creative way. So when I said program your mind, it's passing very clear instructions of what you want to create. So in this particular system, what we do is we convert our goals into these things called affirmations. And a lot of your listeners will have heard of affirmations. They're simply empowering positive statements we make to ourselves morning and evening, aloud with emotion. One of the first people who discovered this thing about affirmations was the psychologist Emile Coué. And I'm sure everyone who's listening has heard the famous saying, every day in every way, I'm getting better and better. And he got his patients who are suffering from various medical or psychiatric conditions to repeat this. And amazingly, I think something like 90% of them improved dramatically. So it's because they were sending these instructions into their subconscious mind every day. In every way, I'm getting better and better. So it works very much in the same sort of way, where actually we have this amazing resource within us that we can program to transform our life. Now, if we, as I said earlier, if we constantly pass negative thoughts and beliefs, then that's what we create, because our subconscious mind is responsive to repetition and emotion, repeated thoughts with emotion, or repeated things that we say with emotion. I think it's often valuable to look at the vocabulary we use. Do we always berate ourselves? Because that literally we're programming our mind in a negative way. So when you convert your goals into affirmations, it's a very simple process. You can then repeat your goals or your affirmations to yourself morning and evening with powerful emotion like gratitude. And that has a huge effect on how quickly we achieve our goals. It can appear like magic, but it's not. We're just simply using our mind in the way we're supposed to use it with all our capabilities. You know, it's wonderful. So people talk about creative visualization, and that's amazing. A lot of people, you know, visualize what it will be like once they achieve their goal. Once again, when we visualize and use as many senses as possible in our visualization, like what if we want to start a business, if we imagine that business in the future doing incredibly well, and you imagine all the details of what we will see and feel and hear when our business is a success. It's literally, we're showing our subconscious mind, this is exactly what I want. And from inner nudgings and promptings and synchronicities that happen, the path opens before us. It's amazing. So that's programming our mind. The next step is planning for accelerated success. And obviously, if we just try to achieve our goals without any plan, it's not going to be very productive for us. But when we brainstorm for each one of our goals, once again, get a piece of A4 piece of paper and just write down on the piece of paper the stepping stones or the things that we think we will need to do to achieve the goal. Doesn't matter if we don't know all the things that we need to do. Just writing down a few of them will kickstart the creative flow, and we'll have a lot more ideas about how to achieve our goals. So that basic brainstorming session can help us to map out the things we need to do to achieve our goals. One wonderful way of doing this is using mind mapping software. But as I say, we can do this literally on an A4 sheet of paper. Also, I think it's really important to, once we have an action plan for each of our goals, to take consistent action. Some of our goals we need to take daily action. Other ones, you know, that are less important, maybe further off into the future, maybe less frequent. But we need to take consistent action. As I said earlier, you know, little baby steps added up can amount to huge things. And there's this saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. But a lot of people don't take that first step. When you take that first step, it sets in motion something. And the next step is easier, and the next step is easier. And before you know it, you've come very far. You know, so that's really important. The next step, and you mentioned this before we started the program, high performance habits. For me, this is quite a relatively new thing. I'd never heard of high performance training up until about 5 years ago. And I have a wonderful mentor. Some of your listeners will know his name, Brendan Burchard. And he is the founder of the High Performance Institute. And he studied, I think it's 300,000 high performers worldwide. And you might think, what's a high performer? A lot of people are familiar with peak performance. And if you're an athlete, you need to reach peak performance states, but you can't sustain peak performance. Mm-hmm. An athlete can't keep running, a few thousand miles. They just burn out with exhaustion. So, but a high performer, because after every peak, there's a trough. So peak performance is not sustainable. But a high performer is someone who succeeds above and beyond standard norms consistently over the long term. The key word there is consistent. So there are certain strategies, tools, and techniques that you can adopt that will enable you to succeed above and beyond standard norms consistently over the long term. And these are very simple techniques. Like one example in my book is a simple Qigong exercise where you tap various parts of your body with your right cupped hand. You hold your left arm out in front of you and just tap your way up the arm. And you do the same with your legs and the sides. And you might think, what's the point of that? Well, you know what? It only takes about 2 minutes. And there's a special breathing exercise. But at the end of that 2 minutes, if you work, in front of a computer like I do, and I think you do a lot of the time, when you go back in front of your computer, you've more focus, you've more energy, your mind is clear. And I think the tendency, generally, we start at the beginning of the day with maximum energy. As we go through the day, our energy starts to wane. At the end of the day, a lot of people are burnt out. And when they go home to their families, well, because they're so burnt out, they've less to contribute, So, but this is a way of replenishing your energy as you move through the day. And when you do that, when you have more energy, when you are more focused, when you're more alive, when you feel more vibrant and happy, think of how that affects your work. Mm-hmm. And now think about how that affects your work every single day if you're doing that. And I know from personal experience, the difference is profound. So whatever it is we're trying to achieve in our lives, doesn't have to be business goals. It can be absolutely anything. And it doesn't matter what our profession is. If we're a stay-at-home mom, or we're a NASA scientist, or we own a business, or we're starting a business, or we're at university, just taking these 2-minute breaks every 60 to 90 minutes of the day. That's every hour to hour and a half. Doesn't matter. Somewhere between those extremes. Wow, life starts to sparkle. You start to have a vibrancy that's very noticeable to most people.
I'm sorry. I noticed in your book that you actually map out an example day for a high performer. Can you just walk us through maybe one like that you've actually set up so people can get an image of what that day looks like?
Sure. Great question, because I'm liable to go off on tangents and miss a whole lot of things I should have mentioned. Thanks, Jason. Yeah. I think I gave an example of when I was writing my previous book, which is Unlock Gratitude. And I gave an example of my average day, because one of the most important things about becoming a high performer is planning your days better. And for most people, now there are people who are night owls and they're more creative at night, and that's fantastic. That's the time of day you should, reserve for your creative pursuits. But for most people, for me personally, I'm at my most creative early in the morning. Mm-hmm. So I allocated 2 hours every morning to write my book. I would switch off phone, email, social media, everything, no distractions. Mm-hmm. Because honestly, if we allow ourselves to be distracted, we will be distracted. So first 2 hours of every day, I would write my book. Then after, I would do these exercises I mentioned just before. So I'd start the day with a punch, Mm-hmm. And then halfway through that, I'd take a break for 2 minutes. I'd start tapping, I'd be doing deep breathing, and I'd go back to my book. And I would notice how more creative I would be. I'd never done this before a few years back. I had no idea how powerful such simple things could be. And then the next step, I think, I'd take another exercise break, and then I would check my emails. I wouldn't go near my emails until 11:30 in the morning, because as Brendan Burchard says, your inbox is a very convenient way for filing other people's agendas. Great truth in those words. Sure. Great truth in those words, because once we're looking at email, we're in reactionary mode. We can't be so creative, okay, because we're answering people.
And you're quite specific as to those 2 minutes. I mean, you say 5
Oh, yeah,
o'clock, I stop, 5:02, I'm back at it.
Okay, I wouldn't be rigid, but it's kind of an example. Sometimes I go over 60 minutes or 90 minutes for the exercise breaks. It depends what I'm doing.
Sure.
But generally, our phones are great devices because we can set alarms to remind us to do these short 2-minute breaks. And I have this beeping every so often. It drives my wife and kids mad when they hear beep, beep, beep. Oh, what do you have to do now? But it makes a world of difference.
Sure.
So by the end of the day, and as you mentioned, other things at different times of the day, maybe staff meeting or whatever, but what you'll see consistently throughout the day are these 2-minute breaks. And the last break, about an hour before I finish my work, I do those exercises so that I will have more energy for the rest of the day. Mm-hmm. So the difference between taking these short high performance breaks and not taking them, especially when we're doing something really creative or something that demands our energy, the difference is huge. It's huge. Sometimes the simplest things can actually be the most profound. And I think that many people at the beginning of the year, they think, right, I'm going to get healthy. And they start going to the gym, or they start working out and start looking at the food they eat. And that's great. That's great. And many laps of a couple of months later. But very few people think about the most important part of our body that needs the most exercise. That's our brain. Because our brain controls everything else. And when we optimize our brain power, when we constantly boost our brain power with these simple exercises, we operate on a higher level. We operate, our brain works in a way that we may be surprised that we're capable of, and that also comes into food and diet. Are we eating and drinking foods that are poisoning our body and making our thoughts cloudy and foggy, or is our thinking very slow and sluggish? That's why we need to improve our health. Because when we improve our health, if we're not already very healthy, it affects how we think, it affects our brain power, it affects how quickly we achieve our goals. Yeah. So Brendan has this amazing book called High Performance Habits, and it goes into some of these things, just wonderful. And the last, number 7, which I think, honestly, is the most important step of all. And you don't do these in this particular order. You can, but one of the biggest reasons why people don't achieve their goals is down to their beliefs of what they're capable of. We all have this negative inner voice that assails us all of the time, saying, you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that, or you're not intelligent enough, or you're not wise enough, or you failed in the past, and what's the point of trying it again? We have this negative inner voice. And that negative inner voice will rule us if we allow it to. So we need to discover what those negative beliefs are. And I think you'll agree, Jason, that from the time we're born, we are bombarded with thoughts and ideas of how we should think and what we should believe and what we can achieve and what we can't achieve. From the moment we're born, we're conditioned by our parents, our siblings, our teachers, governments, religions, politics, all the time. Turn on the TV and we're all these ads telling us how beautiful we should be and making us feel inadequate and feeling, we're bombarded by these beliefs. And I heard somewhere that the average person, I think in a single day, sees in some form or other, over 10,000 ads in some shape or form, telling you how you should be. So once we get into our 20s, I've noticed a big difference between kids in their late teens, early 20s, and those in their mid-30s. It's not that they're wiser, but I've noticed this very sad thing that if you talk to university students or college students, kids leaving school, what are your dreams? In most cases, they're all excited about the future. And then they arrive in their 20s, early 30s, and they discover life isn't a bed of roses. Maybe failed relationships, careers gone wrong, setbacks. And by the time most people, reach their 30s, mid-30s, they've had the stuffing knocked out of them. They've had so many difficult experiences that they start to believe that certain things aren't possible. They start to put up with a dissatisfying sense of mediocrity. They just put up with mediocrity. Mm-hmm. So if we don't know what our limiting beliefs are, and most people don't, they are holding us back from achieving amazing things in our lives. Mm-hmm. And to find out what our limiting beliefs are, there's a very simple exercise in my book, but basically you're getting these. I'll give an example. I give an example of part of the exercise. It's an exercise that will only take about an hour, but it has profound effects on people's lives in overcoming things that are holding them back so that they can move forward much more quickly. A lot of people have a lot of, negative ideas and beliefs surrounding money, that it's good to not have money, that we shouldn't have much money, that rich people are greedy, but the fact is, when you have an abundance of wealth, you can do so much more for society. Now, it can make people very greedy and selfish, but if we look at the lives of really successful people, in most cases, the most successful in the world, at some point in their career, they discover that it's about other people, that the most meaningful thing is giving back to society. And we see, the most successful people on the planet with all sorts of foundations helping millions of people. But this simple exercise, you ask yourself why you can't achieve something. And you do it as quickly as possible because you want the first response that comes from you, even if it seems barmy. You're trying to tap your subconscious mind. If you do this exercise slowly, it's not going to work very well. So you ask yourself, in this case, as wealth as an example, I can't become rich because, and the first thing that comes into your mind, just write it down, no matter how crazy. Then you ask yourself once again aloud, I can't become rich, and you write the next thing down. And you do this 10 times, at least 10 times. And if you do it quickly and just write down the first thing that comes to your mind, you'll be shocked at what comes out of your own mind. I've heard people say, I can't become rich because rich people are greedy. I can't become rich because there's not enough wealth to go around. I can't become rich because everybody would hate me. All sorts of, but then there's a simple step where you actually convert those negative beliefs into the opposite. For example, I can become rich because rich people are generous and so am I. That would be the opposite to rich people are greedy. I can become rich because there's an abundance in this world to go around. So you then convert those, you recite the morning and evening as affirmations, and they literally reprogram your mind very quickly to create the new belief. And honestly, it's like being reborn again. Once you shed some of those beliefs, it doesn't have to be in relation to money, it could be any area of life, it could be relationships, it could be health, it could be anything. Once you shed just one or two of those limiting beliefs, what was impossible suddenly becomes possible. It's like the doors are finally pulled open, and it's incredibly powerful. As I say, limiting beliefs are the number one reason why people don't achieve the life they're capable of. And when we all become what we're born to be, when we all become empowered, you know what happens? Generally speaking, people become more giving. And they discover quite quickly when their own needs are met, they want to help other people. And I think that's the greatest gift we can ever give another human being, a way to transform their lives.
Yeah, Mike, thanks so much for going through those steps.
Welcome.
I really appreciate, all of those ideas. What are the consequences of us not becoming more structured and focused and
disciplined?
Yeah, disciplined to not establishing and working toward maybe goals that we might initially think, I can never achieve that. What are the consequences?
Jason, that all along, right throughout my teenage years and into my 20s, that was a word I hated more than anything else. Self-discipline, because it means restriction. It's like something pressing down on your shoulders and horrible. But you know what? If you look at the most successful people in the world, they're not highly self-disciplined. They're not. That's a big fable. Highly successful people and people who achieve extraordinary things are not highly disciplined. They have a few little habits that serve them profoundly. You know, and this is why I mentioned high performance habits, because they're the simplest things that move the needle the most. And you know what, as you mentioned, what happens if we don't take up a new way of doing things and keep consistent with it? Generally, our life can drift. Our life can drift. As I said earlier, we can, in many cases, end up just reacting to changing circumstances. But I think it's so important at some point in our life, we make a decision of the things that we want to achieve, even if we think they're currently impossible. Little baby steps, as I say, one after another. What slowly but surely, what was impossible becomes possible. I have dreams and goals now that if you turn the clock back 15 years ago, I would, you know, or even before the terrible time I went through where I lost everything, I'm achieving things now that I thought would be totally impossible. Right. And I'm not saying that to brag or to boast, but honestly, for me, like everyone, it's a slow opening of potential, a slow opening of potential. And it gets so exciting. You know, there's an expression I've heard a few times that it goes along the lines of about our power, our capability. I can't even remember what the expression was, but basically, you know, if we want fear, it should be our capability, not what we think we're not capable of. I think that every human being is capable of extraordinary things, but if we wait and rely on chance and luck and hope that things will change, they won't. They won't in most cases. As Brendan Burchard, one of my mentors, says, if you want to see major change, something wonderful happen in your life, either something comes into your life or something comes out of your life. And when something new comes out of your life, everything changes very quickly, you know?
Yeah. Interesting ideas. Tell us more if we wanted to find out, listeners who may think, I need to get structured on this. How can they find out more about your system and about the ways you're trying to help others achieve goals?
Sure. I think the best thing is I'm giving away a free gift. Any of your listeners would like it. I'm giving away a copy of my book, Unlock Gratitude Now. It was my first bestseller. And also giving away another ebook on the predominantly scientific evidence for life after death. It's an area I spent over 40 years researching. I used to talk on radio and TV about this a lot. I believe that when people discover this evidence, they live their lives in a completely different way. Our lives go on. Our lives go on. Our lives are so precious, and our life does not end when we die. So I'm also giving away, as part of this free gift package, a short video course. It's a 4-part video course called Change Your Thoughts, Transform Your Life. Listeners can get it at achievegoalsfast.com/gift. That's all one word, www.achievegoalsfast.com/gift.
Very good. Thanks, Mike, for sharing your story, for taking us through that difficult time in your life, for the success you've had since, and the things that you've noticed that have contributed to your success. Thanks for being willing to share all of that information. Thanks for
my pleasure. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, and thanks for joining the show today.
It's been a real privilege and a pleasure.
And there you go with episode 246. Such passion Mike has about helping others set and establish their goals. Great thoughts on step number 4 through 7. Number 4, programming our mind, appreciating our subconscious, and visualizing our success. Number 5, planning for accelerated success, taking consistent action. Number 6, having high performance habits, from mapping out our day to considering what we eat and drink and getting good rest. And finally, number 7, believing in ourselves and that we'll achieve our goals, keeping in check those negative beliefs.
Thank you so much for joining me today, and I do hope you found it helpful. To get free books, videos, and training programs that will help you to achieve your goals 10 times faster, visit my website at achievegoalsfast.com. That website again is achievegoalsfast.com. Also, remember to share this podcast with your friends and anyone you feel might benefit from it. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I look forward to speaking with you again very soon.